NFL training camps are starting this week, and in today's video, I'll be giving you one player or a couple players to keep an eye out from every single team of who they might be breaking out, who each team might have as a breakout player candidate for this year, or just guys who maybe on their last leg. Either way, before we get into this video, let me remind you to check out W.GG. Use code Shredder for 10% off your order of anything off their website. They have great energy drinks and other products on their website. Go check it out. Like I said, that's W.GG, or just click the link down in the description, and let's get right into this video. We're going to be going in alphabetical order for this by the team location. So starting off in Arizona, my player for Arizona to watch out for during training camp or even through the preseason in those games is Garrett Williams, cornerback. He's a second-year guy. Had a really solid first year. I was a big fan of him coming out of Syracuse last year, but showed us enough last year that this is a guy who could legitimately be trusted and could be a legit starter in the league. I think he has a great amount of upside too. As long as he stays healthy, could be a very good player for a very long time. Going forward to the Atlanta Falcons, here I've got Clark Phillips, a similar situation. He was a fourth-round guy last year in his second year. He was really slotted as a nickel corner and panned out to be a really good, solid outside corner as well. Very physical player. And in the secondary he's in with A.J. Terrell, with Jesse Bates, his job is strictly to do what he needs to do on his guy. He doesn't have to go around and do a whole bunch of other things. And that's why he could be a really, really solid player for a long time. I really like Clark Phillips and Garrett Williams. Both just happen to be corners to start off this video. Going to Baltimore. This team is interesting. I didn't know who to go with exactly until I looked down their roster a little bit and found Tez Walker, the rookie from North Carolina. He could be a really viable weapon. I like what I've seen from Tez Walker in terms of his college production. I know he had some issues in transfers and all this other stuff that made him miss some games even last year at UNC with Drake May. But when he played, he looked like a legit option. And as long as he just stays on the field, doesn't get in any trouble, things like that, this guy could be really, really solid. I think he could be one of the better receivers that Baltimore has had in the time that Lamar's been there, as long as he actually hits the things he needs to do and does them right. Going forward, Buffalo. This one's going to be the rookie safety, Cole Bishop. Second-round guy from Utah. Kind of maybe some people saw this as a stretch pick, but I actually really like this in terms of Buffalo and how they play football. Their starting safeties right now are Mike Edwards and Taylor Rapp, and I really think, Cole Bishop could steal Mike Edwards' starting spot before the season even starts. The chances are they do give Mike Edwards a very big heads up, and he plays at least week 1, week 2 as a starter. But Cole Bishop, by the end of the year, watch out for this kid. He could be a legit starter in the league in his first year and not that long. And then the Panthers. To me, this one is definitely Jonathan Brooks. This is Jonathan Brooks, if you know anything about him. Running back from Texas, had a really solid college career, but got cut short, especially last year in one of their best years as a team, due to the injuries he took. And it's a rough situation, but the talent level with Jonathan Brooks is crazy high. This guy could come in and be one of the best running backs in the league in just a few years. I would not be shocked to see that happen. But it starts off with the Panthers O-line. They have really worked around this O-line this year. They were terrible last year, and now they have a legit starting group. Between Taylor Moton and Akem Ekwonu on each side being really solid tackles, they bring in Robert Hunt from Miami and Damian Lewis from Seattle, and they have Austin Corbett, who's a fine starter at center. This is a good group, and it only should help Jonathan Brooks. Now, he has to fight to get the minutes over Chuba Hubbard and maybe even Miles Sanders, but honestly, with the talent this guy has, he could do that by week 5. I don't think that's crazy at all. With Chicago, I have a bit of an interesting one here. I'm going to go with Kieran Amajadi, the tackle they got from Yale, only because I'm not the biggest fan of Darnell Wright. He had an okay first year. That's fine. I don't think he was really drafted where he should have been. Anyways, his first year was fine. He wasn't bad, but he wasn't great. But if he doesn't really improve this year, will Kieran Amajadi really get a chance to play this year? Maybe not, barring injury, obviously. But I think he could take that right tackle spot from Darnell Wright within a year or two. It's kind of a longer-term thing, but if we see some really good things from Amajadi in this offseason and going into this season, and we see some, not so amazing things from Darnell Wright, him not taking a step up in year 2, this is a position that I think could turn over in Chicago very quickly as they're looking to protect Caleb Williams and get the fastest chance to win possible. The Cincinnati Bengals, I've got 2 guys really here because I couldn't pick one out of the 2. For me, it's either Chase Brown or Andre Yosevich. Both of them are second-year guys, and they're going to be in positions to take up much bigger roles than they had last year. I'm a really big fan of Chase Brown. He had some fumble issues in college, but if he can keep that ball in his hands, there's no reason he can't be the starting running back for this team this year. Zach Moss had a really good, Jeremy Lin type of Linsanity run last year, but we haven't seen Zach Moss be a legit starter in this league. And if Chase Brown can be a little bit more electric and a little bit more effective, there's no reason that Zach Moss will start over him for more than 3 weeks. And then for Yosevich, obviously there's going to be some turnover with this Bengals locker room. Obviously they're paying Joe Burrow. They're going to pay Jamar Chase. T. Higgins is going to be on his way out. And right now, they have the rookie from Alabama, Jermaine Burton. I almost forgot. They have him as their starting number 3 receiver. But Yosevich played really well last year when he got chances with some crappy quarterback situations, to be quite honest. Yosevich has shown to be a reliable target, good hands, good route running. Is he the best athlete? Probably not, but he can do a lot of good things, and I think he could step up for this team in a big way in this season. Then the Cleveland Browns. For this one, I've got Mike Hall Jr., their second-round D tackle out of Ohio State. And this one's mainly because their current starting rotation on the D-line, obviously there's Myles Garrett and Zadarius Smith on the outside, but the inside's not so solid. This is a spot that I think Shelby Harris currently has that Michael Hall could quickly take. Michael Hall has a ton of upside, maybe was drafted a little early in the second round, but ultimately this could be a really good pickup either way. He has a lot of ability, and it's just Ohio State D tackles, D linemen in general, they tend to be pretty good. Let's just be real. They play really tough, hard-nosed football, and he has a good shot to come into the NFL with a higher level of preparation than a lot of other guys tend to have. Going to Dallas now. This one, kind of a strange one here. DeMarvion Overshown. He was hurt a lot last year in his first year, but this was a guy out of Texas as a linebacker who was super athletic, super rangy, a lot of length to him. Really interesting player. And the linebackers in Dallas have been decent, but not amazing. If he can come in and be a much more reliable player at this linebacker position, I'd be very excited to see how good Overshown could be on a Dallas defense that has Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence and Trayvon Diggs and yada, yada, yada. You got all these people. Get another good linebacker cover in the middle of the field could be nasty. And then in Denver, this one is a strange little combo as well. And it's kind of because they come from the same place. And if you can't tell, I'm talking about Bo Nix and Troy Franklin. Both rookies out of Oregon, the first and fourth round picks for the Broncos, respectively. Obviously, Bo Nix is not the most high-quality quarterback prospect ever in the NFL. However, he is one of the most quarterback, QB NFL-ready positions ever seen in the NFL. The way he played throughout his college career, especially in the last few years, was really solid. There's no reason that he can't come into the league. He's going to win the starting job because he's going against Zach Wilson and I don't even know who right now. I can't remember the other person. I feel like I should know who this is. But anyways, he's going against not a lot of competition in this quarterback room. He's going to win the position, being the first-round rookie. And Sean Payton can help him a lot. He has a lot of traits like Drew Brees did, a very high IQ in terms of pre-snap reads. I like Bo Nix a lot. And that leads into Troy Franklin. Troy Franklin was, maybe supposed to be an upper-round pick in this draft. Then he fell because he didn't test the greatest at the combine and other things like that. However, with the sense of familiarity with a quarterback like Bo Nix has with Troy Franklin, in a wide receiver room that isn't really the most deep room, you have Cortland Sutton, you have Marvin Mims, that's about it. He could be wide receiver 3 as soon as week 1. I really think so. And it's mainly because he's going to have a higher level of comfort with Bo Nix throwing him the football than any of these other guys have. And it's going to make him look a lot better. Simple as that. Going to Detroit now. This one, it's kind of weird. It's the entire wide receiver room outside of Amon-Ra. Because who is wide receiver 2? I know a lot of people are going to go straight to Jameson Williams, but we haven't seen him do a whole lot in his career, to be quite honest. We've got him. You've got Traquan Smith. You've got Khalif Raymond. You've got DPJ, Donovan Peoples-Jones. Who is wide receiver 2? That's the big question. And through this training camp, through the preseason, we should be able to figure that out pretty reliably. If we don't get a distinctive answer, that could be an issue in Detroit. They might need to go out and grab a Cortland Sutton if he ends up on the trade market, or, a Michael Thomas to just get a reliable set of hands in. But, obviously you want to go with Jameson Williams, but he just hasn't done enough in his career to really prove that he is that true wide receiver 2. Honestly, I think Traquan Smith has a really solid outside chance to win this job because he's been in a higher level capacity role before with New Orleans a few years ago. Yeah, he's fallen off since then, but maybe he can pull something back out of the depths of his game. Going forward to Green Bay, this one's going to be Kalen King. Obviously, this is a crazy situation. He was a potential first-round pick a couple years ago in projections, and now he fell all the way to almost the very last pick of the draft. If you're in Green Bay, you ought to be really excited about him and seeing him play, because outside of Jair Alexander, you've had a lot of questions in the secondary. They bolstered the safety group this year, getting Javon Ballard and then Xavier McKinney. But CB2 is Eric Stokes, who's been inconsistent. You have Keyshawn Nix, who's really more of a returner or a nickel corner. If Kalen King can show his upside again, this could be an ecstatic pick for Green Bay. Then in Houston, in my opinion, this one is going to have to be Will Anderson. I didn't find many other players that were that interesting other than the situation of Will Anderson in year 2. Obviously had a really, really good year 1. I'm just really interested to see how well he's going to be in terms of his growth from year 1 to year 2, but also checking in on how good is he going to be with Danielle Hunter on the other side of him. That's going to be a huge help to him, and really to anybody. If you get that good of an edge rusher on the other side of you, the pressure is taken off of you a lot. So very excited to see how good Will Anderson can be in year 2. Going into the Colts, it's A.D. Mitchell. A.D. Mitchell through and through. This guy should not have been a second-round pick. He was a first-rounder in my book, 100%. Go back 3-6 months ago. You can see it on my channel that I have loved A.D. Mitchell since I started looking at him in this draft. The physical ability he has, the absolute dominance he can be with his frame, the speed he has with that frame. This is like a perfect receiver prospect. Yeah, he was a little bit, some issues mentally potentially, but we don't even know how true that is. Give him a break. If the maybe getting drafted late could be a really good, humbling thing for him. And if that is, sounds rough, but it also could be one of the best things for him. Very, very interested to see how this goes with A.D. Mitchell. And he's going to come in and be wide receiver, 2, 3. He's not in front of Michael Pittman. He's not, and probably not in front of Josh Downs, but he's going to probably get the leg up over Alec Pierce. It's going to be fun to see A.D. Mitchell play, especially in this offense and how all the pieces they have coming together. In the Jacksonville Jaguars, to me, it's Parker Washington. This guy has a super interesting case. If you were anybody who paid attention to the Jaguars last year, you'd see that they haven't had the best receiver group, and I've been highly critical of Jacksonville and their acquisition of receiver talent. They bring in all these guys and pay them tons and tons of money, guys like Calvin Ridley and Christian Kirk and Gabe Davis now, and all these guys are wide receiver 2s, and you're giving them nearly, low-end wide receiver 1 money. It makes no sense. Why, you're wondering why your quarterback hasn't really progressed too much when he has a lot of talent. It's because his receivers are a bunch of, guys who are not that great, and you're giving him just average receivers. However, you bring in Brian Thomas, great. Parker Washington, drafted last year, didn't get to play a whole lot, but when he did play, he had a very, very good response time and comfort level with Trevor Lawrence. This is something that was really interesting to see. Came out and played like 1-2 games legitimately, actually played in them, not just got a few snaps here and there, and looked really solid when he actually was on the field. But he didn't even get that many chances. He had like 16 catches on the year or something around that ballpark. But if he could keep going and just show off more and more talent and comfort with Trevor Lawrence, he could create himself a role in this offense very, very quickly, in my opinion. Now, in Kansas City, this one's going to be very similar to Chicago's here. And I have Kingsley Suamataia as a very interesting pick. There's multiple reasons for this. He was their second-round pick out of BYU as a tackle. But at the same time, they just lost Donovan Smith. And now you have the question of Wanya Morris and his issues that he's had off the field. Is he going to play? So it's kind of just a default pick here. Kingsley Suamataia has a chance to start when you wouldn't really thought that maybe 3-4 months ago. Going to LA and the Chargers, this is Tuli Tuipulotu. And it's highly pending on how good we see Khalil Mack be once again. Because for a while there, Khalil Mack wasn't very relevant. In the last 3-4 years, he was decent. He was a rotation piece, but he was just getting older. He wasn't that same guy. Last year, he resurged. Now, there's a lot of hype surrounding him, and I love Khalil Mack, but let's be real. If he didn't have that one game with 6 sacks, he had a good year. Not a great year, but it looks like a great year because he had one crazy game. Now, Tuli Tuipulotu also showed off some great features of himself last year, and I'm ready to see how good he looks full-time. And he's going to get a lot of play because they're going to, let Joey Bosa breathe. They're going to let Khalil Mack breathe. And let's be real, both those guys have had injury issues in the last few years. So Tui Pelotu is going to play, and I think he's going to play very well when he gets his chances. Going to the Rams now, to me, it's the entirety of the D-line. Braden Fisk, Jared Verse, Byron Young, Kobe Turner. What can they do to replace Aaron Donald? Because no one can replace Aaron Donald. That's not happening. But all of them collectively have a lot of talent and ability to replace him. And it could be really interesting. And honestly, maybe it could be, in some senses, a better thing. Obviously, it's not great to lose one of the best defensive players ever. But when you get this much talent to replace it, there's a world where maybe they could be a collectively better group defensively. Then, for the Raiders, this one to me is their first-round pick from last year, Tyree Wilson. Tyree Wilson was, coming out of Texas Tech, was a project, very athletic, big guy, big frame, and he might be transitioning to D-tackle. He put on a lot of weight. He looks enormous. Not like just like tall and whatever. He looks thick, like insanely huge. I mean, there's no other way to put it. If he continues on this path of being as ginormous as he is, well, we could see some crazy stuff from Tyree Wilson on the inside of this D-line. Jumping over to Miami, I think this one's going to be a strange one here, and it's going to be Muhammad Kamara, their fifth-round pick out of Colorado State as an edge rusher. Kamara would not be your normal pick for this. However, Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb are on the PUP list or whatever list they are on to start training camp. Muhammad Kamara and Jop Robinson are going to get a lot of the first-team reps, and in some ways, that could be way better for them in terms of their career progressions because they're going to have to learn and develop to be those ones way earlier on in their careers than most would have to be. And if he gets chances and he shows up well, Bradley Chubb could become very expendable, having Chop Robinson and him waiting in the wings behind Jalen Phillips. Then Minnesota, obviously, this is going to be J.J. McCarthy. Let's just be real here. But one thing I like to keep an eye on is Jordan Addison. With a lot of his off-field issues in the last 2 years, I've seen a lot of Vikings fans calling for him to be traded or released because they're tired of the trouble. Very talented player, and I think is going to go down as the best receiver out of last year's draft class, in my opinion. But he's got a lot of issues surrounding him. So between him and McCarthy, both very, very interesting to watch here in 2024. Going into New England, I've got two separate things here. I'm going to talk about the first one, which is the bigger one for a while. The New England Patriots receiver room. A lot of people have been hating on them, say they have nothing and it's a rough group. While, yes, they are a relatively rough group, they actually have a lot of really solid guys. They just don't have a lot of good guys, if that makes any sense. They have legitimately 9 guys who can make a roster on most teams. Even if they're, wide receiver 5 or 6 on a lot of them. They have Kendrick Bourne, Demario Douglas, Jalen Polk. Those guys are making this roster, no doubt. Then they have KJ Osborne, who's probably making the roster. Juju Smith, who might get cut because of a cap reason, but he's going to end up on somebody else's roster pretty quickly after that. Javon Baker, a rookie they just got. Jalen Reagor, Tyquan Thornton, and Kayshon Boutte. Those two at the last part there. Those two at the last there, they could maybe turn out to be, I don't know, not on this roster, not on many rosters, but still some talent there to develop one way or another. And the second part I want to talk about is Drake May. If you've been around my channel, I'm a big Drake May fan. I think he was the second best quarterback in this class, and I think he's going to be very, very good. Check the tape at North Carolina. Didn't have a lot of guys on his field to help him out, but still did some incredible things on his own. The way he runs, the way he sees the field. I think he is, maybe not the best quarterback prospect this year. Obviously, Caleb Williams is there, but he's a close number 2. In my opinion, he's a lot closer to May. May is a lot closer to Williams than May is closer to Daniels. I think Daniels is a little bit of a step down and a good 3 spot there. Going forward to New Orleans, A.T. Perry. I love A.T. Perry. If you've been around this channel, like I've said before, breakout season, A.T. Perry in year 2. He has the role to do it. Everything makes sense. Chris Olave, their number 1 receiver, he doesn't play the same position A.T. Perry does. He plays in the slot or, as an underneath mid receiver that takes things, with his shiftiness outside. A.T. Perry's going to be their primary outside guy who can just catch bombs and just absolutely just go over top of people every single play. It's going to be great. A.T. Perry breakout season this year. Then the New York Giants. This one is weird. I could not figure out who to pick. You could maybe go with, is Daniel Jones going to keep his job? Is Evan Neal going to keep his job? Is Deontay Banks going to take a step up in year 2? to me, I have to go with Isaiah Simmons because this guy is just so incredibly interesting. Yes, he's going to be the oldest player on this list by far. He's like 5 years older than everybody else. But he's listed today as running with the cornerback group, which is crazy considering he's been a safety and a linebacker primarily in his career. He's a lot bigger than a corner. Could he play a nickel role? Probably is what he's going to do. Their new DC could have a very good vision for him and how to use a dynamic player like him. Players like him are tough because they could be really, really good. They have a lot of talent and a lot of ability, but they have so much talent that it doesn't fit them into one spot, and it almost makes them harder to use. So, interested to see Isaiah Simmons and what he does in training camp and preseason to make himself, stand out on this roster. Then the New York Jets, Olu Fashanu, mainly because obviously last year he was supposed to be in the draft, but he went back and he was going to be the best tackle in last year's draft. Goes back to Penn State and, kind of loses his stock a little bit. Still was a first-round guy. Still should be a first-round guy. But this team has Morgan Moses on the right side and Tyron Smith on the left. So is he going to get to play year one? I don't know. Will they move him at guard just because he's one of the best 5'0 linemen they have? I don't think that'd be a bad idea just to get him on the field. But then also you have to think of the fact that Tyron Smith never stays healthy. So does he just play left tackle a lot this year anyways, where he's probably going to be for the rest of his career? I don't know. I just want to know how this Jets O-line kind of comes together because I don't, quite frankly, understand how it's going to at all right now. In Philadelphia, my guy here is Ainias Smith, the receiver out of Texas A&M. I believe he was like their third-round pick or something like that. He could easily be their wide receiver 3 very soon. Paris Campbell is currently the team's wide receiver 3, and I just think that he could take that over very fast. I just think he's a very good prospect. And he kind of complements A.J. Brown really well as being the outside guy, letting Devontae Smith play in the slot. Or really, Ainias Smith could play in the slot too, I think. But I'm really interested to see just who ends up being wide receiver 3 because, let's be real, Paris Campbell hasn't had the career that a lot of people would hope he would have at this point. And Ainias Smith being a rookie, just, giving him the reps and more play time could help him out a lot long term. Then, in Pittsburgh, to be quite honest with you, I couldn't pick one here. I just couldn't. There's probably 7 things here that you could watch for because this team's in such a strange position, unlike any other team. A lot of turnover, but didn't lose that many players. It's because of the different guys they brought in. So first off, obviously the Russ and Fields thing. I'm more interested in Russ because I just don't see a world where Fields starts this year at all outside of maybe injury. I'm just not interested in anything Justin Fields has to offer this season. I'm just not really convinced that Justin Fields is anything more than a, goofy highlight ball. That's all he is, really. I just don't see it other than that. Russ, though, I think there's a world where he plays really, really well. How well? I don't know. I mean, he's played statistically well for Denver the last few years, but there's a reason they moved off of him. So what is he going to bring to the table is ultimately the question. Then you have Roman Wilson and the wide receiver 2 here. Van Jefferson's obviously been slotted on the roster as that, but it's Van Jefferson, let's be real. Roman Wilson's the rookie, a lot of hype there. Quez Watkins has been around the league a little bit. Just a lot of things. There's also rumors of trades to Pittsburgh with Cortland Sutton, with Brandon Ayuk, with Jordan Addison, who else and who not, really. So that position group. And then the cornerback 3 position, just because of the fact that obviously Joey Porter Jr. CB1, they trade for Dante Jackson. And then after that, well, they signed Cam Sutton, but now he's suspended. And, there's a lot of, Corey Trice was a rookie last year who a lot of people have a lot of interest in. But how good can he be coming off this ACL tear? Beanie Bishop, an undrafted free agent of West Virginia, looks really solid. But how solid is really solid? Braylon Arnold. And there's just a lot of stuff here, man. It's a lot of stuff to break down in Pittsburgh. Not to mention they bring in Patrick Queen. And how good is he? Because was he just a Roquan Smith merchant? I don't know. A lot going on in Pittsburgh. Then you have San Francisco. And for me, their pick here, I'm interested in Cameron Latu. Strange one here, you might think. It's his second year in the league. But right now, obviously, he's not playing over George Kittle. Let's just forget that. However, they have a lot of two tight end sets. They do a lot of big package stuff. And Logan Thomas is currently the other guy. Well, Logan Thomas is known as a guy who gets hurt a ton. Cameron Latu could play a lot as that tight end too. And I think even without Logan Thomas being hurt, he could take that spot. I like Cameron Latu and his talent and ability. Very interested to see how well he does in the preseason especially. Going to Seattle, why does it have a white background? I don't know. None of the other ones do. Anywho, to me it's their QB situation. Because obviously you might think Geno Smith is a lock for QB1. And at this moment, yes, he is. However, Geno was a career backup for 10 years for a reason. And yeah, we've seen him have a resurgence, but does that last? That's what I want to know. He obviously took a step back last year. I could see a world where he takes a pretty hefty step back this year with his age and everything combined. That brings you to QB2, having Sam Howell brought in. Sam Howell is a guy who's effectively only a second-year player. In his third year, he didn't really touch the field whatsoever in his first, outside of the final game of the season. But just if Geno Smith takes a pretty violent step back, could Sam Howell start? I think that's a super reasonable thing to do. Sam Howell's a young guy who's had minimal, true ability to play and put up some numbers, good or bad, if you want to, qualify how good those were. He put up numbers. And I think there's some hope for Sam Howell's career, and really potentially the real shot at the future quarterback of the Seahawks if Geno Smith goes out earlier than expected. Then we go to Tampa Bay. And this one, I'm really interested here in Bucky Irving. Obviously, Rachaad White's been their starting running back for the last few years. I'm not a Rachaad White fan. I think he's a pretty average running back, lower tier starter, if a starter at all. Very replaceable, in my opinion. He's fine. He's just not special. He's a, number 30 to 34 guy in the league in terms of running back rankings. He's a good receiver. Bucky Irving's is probably better in all the things that Rachaad White does, I think. He was drafted in the 4th round, so he's not going to get a lot of hype coming out, but Bucky Irving's a twitchy dude. His size is, is a little small, but if he could just, be as twitchy and as explosive as he was at Oregon, I would love to see him take over that RB1 spot in Tampa Bay. Then, for Tennessee, the Titans, it's kind of similar to that. Tyjae Spears, but in a weird way, because Tennessee, obviously, they lose Derrick Henry, who they've had for forever, bring in Tony Pollard, but why? Tyjae Spears drafted last year, played some last year, looked really, really solid. I'm a Tyjae Spears guy. I think he could be a very good running back in the league. So why bring Tony Pollard here? Why spend the money when you have Tyjae Spears, a guy who plays a similar brand of football? I don't know. I just, quite frankly, do not know. Maybe, why not go get a Gus Edwards, a guy who's a power back, something like that, and, complement him and Tyjae Spears together? No, let's get a guy who's, similar to Tyjae Spears. He's a receiver. Tyjae Spears is more of a runner, but anyways, I just don't get it, to be quite honest. Why bring in Tony Pollard? And ultimately, can Tyjae Spears steal the job back? I think that's very, very possible, very, very likely even. And then for the Washington Commanders, this team I'm very interested in. Ben Sinnott, whatever it is, I don't care. Rookie out of Kansas State. He's a, pretty solid tight end prospect. Obviously, I think he was drafted in the 2nd round, if I'm not mistaken. And they don't have a really clear-cut number 1 tight end. Obviously, Zach Ertz is the big addition to the room so far this year. But Zach Ertz has had his career ups and downs, and, he's a veteran, been around a long, long time. I'm just not so convinced that Zach Ertz, I'm a big Zach Ertz fan. I loved him in Philly, but I'm not so convinced he's going to be able to at least keep healthy and do that again this year as a starter full-time. Ben Sinnott could be a really quick, early, guy who comes in, takes over the spot, and makes Zach Ertz his backup very, very quickly. That's going to be the end of this video, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Once again, check out w.gg and use code SHREDDER for 10% off on any order you make on the website. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It does help my channel out a ton. And, I'm trying to grow this channel. Let's be real. Help me out. It doesn't cost you a single thing. And I'll see y'all in the next video.